Good afternoon. I'm David Bowman, the Executive Director for the Regional Education Cooperative Number 1 up in the Four Corners region. And welcome to each of you to this short session on professional tools or pro tips for using Microsoft Word. And so welcome. Thank you all for being here. Let's get started, right? All right, so I'm going to pull up our first sample, and I'm going to use this sample to demonstrate some techniques. There's really two types of things that we're going to go over today. One is just tools for being more efficient. As with most things, there's a difficult, tedious, imprecise way to do things, and then there's a nice, clean, efficient, beautiful way to do things. And I like the efficient way. So we're going to talk about some strategies for that. But the main point of this is to make sure that whenever we are using Microsoft Word for communications, for sending out stuff to parents, or preparing stuff for our classrooms, or preparing official documents of any kind, or business letters, that they're going to look as professional as they possibly can. I mean, we're always talking about um, presenting ourselves as professionals, but in today's world, the number one way that we present ourselves to people who don't know us especially is through our writing. And the way that the documents look is a big factor in it's sort of our non-personal our nonverbal communication. It's our appearance when people are reading what we write. So we're going to do both those things: efficiency tips and just strategies for making things look beautiful. All right, so let's see. And just for the sake of attendance, RC. Who is RC? If you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and giving me your name, please.
Rochelle Curry.
Ah, okay. It just showed up as RC on there. All right. So let me share the first sample. So I do recommend that you bring up your the cheat sheet, because we're going to use that quite a bit. Now let me make sure I've got the right thing being shared. Pro sample number 1. There we go. All right. I'm going to move a few things around. All right, so what this is actually just some sample text from The Prince by Machiavelli. I was looking for just something with a lot of text that we can poke around with and move around. And as you can see, it'd be difficult to read this for a variety of things, one of which is the fact that it's difficult to see where those paragraphs are, which of course are essential. So let's first just do a couple of quick things just to set up the overall document, and then we'll work on formatting the text. After we do this, we're going to go to sample number 2, and I'm going to have you all walk me through the techniques for making it more attractive. All right, so we're going to use this for like demonstrating, and then we'll go to sample 2, and you all will tell me what to do, basically. All right. So the very first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that the overall document is set up, which is going to be the margins primarily and the page size and so forth. So if we go up to our layout tab at the top of Microsoft Word, we've got some options up there in the ribbon. And the very first one that I always look at is the one on size. Now, this is 8.5 by 11. That's the standard default, so we're already good there. But the number 2 is to look at the margins. Depending on your version of Microsoft Word and your settings, a lot of times what you might have is margins that are 1.25 inches all the way around. And generally, we don't want that. For a professional document, the 1-inch margin is absolutely the way to go. But I will give you a hint or a quick tip. Generally, if you have a multi-page document, whatever hits that margin, if anything overlaps that margin, it's going to be pushed down to the next page, which can be a problem if it's just a few words. However, what I have found, and this is something I learned a very long time ago, if we change the bottom margin to 0.9 inches instead of 1 inch, that many times will allow us to get one extra line on the page. Because if we think about some of the letters like J, for example, or Y that hangs down, if it's hanging down into the margin, that line's going to get pushed to the next page and we've lost some space. But changing the bottom to 0.9 will usually solve that. So what we would do is we'd go to custom margins, and then we would say top, bottom, left, right, everything's at 1, but we can change the bottom margin down to 0.9, and that will typically give us one extra line. Now, if we're doing letters or newsletters or anything like that, it's probably not an issue. But if we're talking about a document of text, that extra line that we can get by 0.9 suddenly makes a lot more sense. So I'm going to go ahead and just set this one at 0.9. And it's not really an issue here, but that's a sort of a good tip. If you start wondering, hey, why does my margin, my gap at the bottom seem so big when it's supposed to be 1 inch? There's a very good chance that's the problem. The last line is hitting the margin, so it's getting pushed down to the next page. So that's the very first thing I always look at right there. Now, thinking about the overall structure of this, also the overall appearance on the page, one of the things that we generally want with any kind of formal written documents is a header and a footer. And we can customize that. You're going to see that I really do not like most of the automatic stuff that Microsoft does. There's style settings and page settings and stuff, and they do weird things with the fonts and with the colors and stuff that, it looks fancy, but it's kind of like putting pearls on a pig's neck as far as I'm concerned. I want it to do what I want it to do. So I tend to do everything manually. All right, so let's take a look at I need to expand this a little bit. Let's take a look at our headings and our footers. So also over here on the insert, basically everything on the insert bar is what can we add to this document? Are we adding a picture? Are we adding a table to it? Are we adding a text box? What are we adding into this document? Which also includes headers and footers, which are right over here on the right side of the insert bar. So we're going to add a header. Now, you'll see they've got some, Microsoft will give you some automatic things. And that's all the stuff that frankly I do not like at all. Some of it looks kind of pretty, but if we're talking about professional looking documents, nice, clean, easy to read documents, my general recommendation is to just avoid all of that. So instead, we're going to go to blank, and we can type in our text. Sample 1 for Pro MS Word Tips. Tipos, tips with an S, like that. All right, and I'm going to change that. So looking at our cheat sheet, the very first thing I know I want to do is I want to change that font, and that I'm going to change that text up there. Let me blow this up. That might help you see a little bit better. So under my view menu, I'm going to click zoom, and for percent, I'm just going to type in 150. Make it very big and easy to see. Hopefully that will help folks. All right. So I want to change this over here, and I've got a pretty good variety of things that I can do to change it. Turning to our cheat sheet, one of the things that we might want to do is put it over on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side. Control R will move it over to the right margin. So Control R, right justifies. Control L, maybe I like it there better. Maybe I want it right in the center. Control E will put it automatically in the center. So those are our justifications. We can, from the home menu, we can use the buttons up here as well to move things around. So that's always available to you. You've got a centering button and a right justify and a left justify. Generally, when I'm working on something, my hands are already on the keyboard. So instead of having to move over to the mouse, I'm just going to do Control E. So you've got keyboard shortcuts to just about everything that's up in your menu bar. But let's put it back over here. But I do want to change the font. Okay, this is the heading. It doesn't have to be the same style as the rest of the text. I could come up here on my home menu and I can dig through and I can find a better font, like, where's my absolute Antipasto Pro? Love that. And I can change the size and I can make it bigger and smaller and all sorts of things. But since we're talking about keyboard shortcuts, one of the things that I can do after I highlight it is I can type Control D, D as in David, and it's going to bring up my font menu, my font window. Control D is a great little trick because it puts everything that you might want to do is right there in one place. Fonts, sizes, styles, strike through, double strike throughs, all caps, small caps, and so forth. So that's a good way to get to that. And I will leave it at OK. And I want a page number. So generally my page number is going to go up in my upper right hand corner. Some more modern type documents, I'll see it maybe at the bottom center down in the footer. But typically, if we have multiple pages, it's going to go up on the upper right. So if I hit my tab, it's going to move my cursor over. Now I'm looking at my ruler bar up here. And I see some things that'll help me place text. And right in the middle, I've got what's called a center tab. It's a straight up and down line with a crossbar underneath it. Basically what it says, if I hit tab for anything, it's going to center it around that point. Now over on the right side, I've got something called a right tab, and it looks like this. And what that means is if I tab to that point, my tab key to get to there, the text will start there and it will move over to the left. That's the right, far right side. And that's where I want my page number to go. So I'm going to hit tab once, which puts me right there, and you can see it centering. And I'm going to hit tab again, which will put me all the way over the right side, and you see it goes the other direction because I've got a right tab there. And that's where I want my page number. So we're adding something to this page, which means that we are likely going to find what we need on the insert ribbon. And sure enough, there it is right there. So this is where we go to get our page numbers in. Where do we want it? Top, bottom, all of that. I would say leave all that and just say put it in the current position and make it simple. I need to change that. That font does not have numbers. I love that font, but it doesn't have numbers. Okay, there we go. We use that. Now, how do I get out? So if we're looking at this, right now we're working on the header. And we see the text in the header is very dark, and the rest of the text is gray. We cannot actually work on the header and the body at the exact same time. It's one or the other. So right now we're working on the header, but we're done. So to get out of the header, the very simple thing is just to double click on the body of the text. And now you see the header is in gray and the body of the text is back in black. Well, the reverse is also true. Let's say we want to go back to the header. Well, all we have to do is simply double click on it, and now we are editing the header again. And I can, for example, change this to my second favorite script font, which is something called American Script. And I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. I wouldn't actually recommend American Script for a formal document. I just think it's lovely. And I'm using it for a demonstration. Okay. if I were to make one big recommend, I'll talk about this later, but if I was going to make one big recommendation on how to make sure our documents look professional, Times New Roman is the font to use, not Calibri, not Arial, not any of these, or some type of standard serif font. And by serif font, is it serif, non-serif? Does anybody have a question about what those terms mean? If you do, please jump in and tell me. Serif versus non-serif. Okay, I'm not hearing anybody say anything, so we're going to assume.
Serif has the little flares coming off, and sans serif does not have little flares coming off, correct?
That's exactly right. Let me blow this up to a big number. All right. Yeah. Basically, it's the feet at the bottom of the numbers, or the bottom of the letters. Those are called serifs. And the important thing about serifs is it actually helps the reader's eyes to track across a line. A sans serif font, and I'll just take a part of this and I'll change it to Adele. So a sans serif font does not have the feet on it. A serif font has the feet. For professional documents, serif fonts are the way to go. And just to make it easier for people to read. The sans serif ones are kind of fun. They look lovely. They look very modern. But if we have a lot of text for somebody to read, stick with the serif fonts. All right, let me just undo that. Okay, and get back to a Zoom. And let's go back to 150. There we go. All right. So that's all document setup we need to do at this point. If we wanted to do footers, it's going to be the same thing. Insert, we go over to our footers menu, and now we can add something down there. Okay. And I double click back on the text. All right. So let's take a look at making all of this text more usable. And I would tell you, I'm not really a huge fan of the new versions of MS Word. I'm actually my favorite MS Office package. You might laugh when you hear me say that, but it's Office XP, which came out in 2002. Excel XP, Word XP. Publishers has always been completely awful, and it continues to be awful. It hasn't got any better or any worse. It's already at the bottom. But there are some things that the new versions do very, very well. And it has to do with styles. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time on how do you set up your own styles and how do you use them to make everything not only look more professional, but to make it a lot easier to do. So that is something that they really do very well. All right. So we've got some keyboard shortcuts. One of which is, if you want to select an entire word, you can double click on it and it will automatically select the whole word. If you triple click, you're going to select the entire paragraph, which is kind of a good shortcut. So if you wanted to change the text of a particular paragraph, instead of trying to sort of scroll across it, you could just triple click on the paragraph and the entire paragraph will be selected all at the same time. Well, why did I just do that? The reason why I just did that is to show off these commands for justification. So here we've got Control R, everything's pushed over to the right margin now. Control L, back to the L for left. Control E, I don't know why Control E is for center, but it is. And if we wanted to justify on both sides, full justification, like justify right and justify left, Control J, which I think looks great. And those keyboard shortcuts are in the cheat sheet that I gave you. Like I said, you can use the commands up at the top here also. I just find it to be far more efficient. If my hands were already on the keyboard or on the mouse, just do it that way. Especially that centering one, that makes it really easy. You know, I've seen a lot of people, I hope nobody laughs when I say this, but some people still use computers as if they were typewriters, which means space, 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 and try to eyeball where the center is. Obviously, we're not going to do that. Or to get a tab and put it in the center and then tab to that place. But the fact is we can just do Control E and just center it, and it's going to be smack dab in the middle. All right, so let's center that. Now, some things that we want to do. So we were looking at this ruler up at the top. And there are some very useful things up there that I'm going to show you. But before we start poking around at the formatting, I want to see what is actually happening here. I want to see where the tabs are. I want to see where the paragraph breaks are. I want to see where the styles are, everything. If you've never used it before, you've got something up on your home ribbon called a pilcrow. That is the backwards little P. It's often used to indicate where a paragraph is. The official name of it is pilcrow, and it's right up there in the middle of the ribbon. And when I click on that, it's going to show me all of the invisible formatting controls in the document. So, and let me blow this up a bit more. View, zoom. Let's go all the way up to 200. So there is my pilcrow at the end of my title. So there's my title, there's my pilcrow, and that tells me that is a paragraph break. I also have a little dot indicating spaces. What do you all prefer? I'm going to tell you my preference in a second, but what do you all prefer after a sentence? One space or two spaces? I see a vote for two. Another vote for two. Okay. The funny thing is that's one of those topics that super nerdy people like myself get into raging arguments about. Typically, alcohol is involved. But the fact is, we are using most computers use what's called true type fonts. And with a true type font, the spacing is automatically adjusted between words and after periods. See, the two spaces makes a lot of sense if every letter is the exact same size, because it's going to be hard to figure out where one sentence ends and another one begins. But with these true type fonts, the spacing is already going to be adjusted appropriately, so only one is necessary. So let's say we want to change this to one space after every period. So now that I'm looking at it, I've activated my pilcrow. I'm looking at it and I see there's two spaces there. And down here, there's two spaces after that period. So we have a really neat little trick with Microsoft Word that allows us to make global changes instantaneously throughout a document. Now, whether we're changing a word, we're changing somebody's name, or we're changing the number of spaces, if we want to look through this document and change something throughout from one thing to another, does anybody know what that command is? And feel free to unmute yourselves at will. Does anybody know what the command is to look through a document and make a global change?
I've used find, but I don't know if that would work here.
It would work here. So if we want to find something, Control F, and it's going to bring up our find menu over there. And it's going to say, what are we looking for? Okay. There is, however, something called find and replace. The command for that is Control H. Now, if you just do a regular find, it's going to bring you to the find menu, and there's another tab for replace. Okay. Or we can do Control H, and it will take us automatically straight to the find and replace. So I want to find all of those double spaces, and I want to change them to single spaces. No, we can do that here. I'm going to find what, and I'm going to type in 2 spaces, replace with 1 space, and replace all. It's fixed it 8 times. And now I should have just 1 space after every sentence, which I see is true. For example, in this case right here. Now I only have 1. Okay. So find and replace, very handy. And sometimes, we want to take a document that we've written for, or a letter to a specific person, and their name is throughout it. But you think, I like this, and I want to send it to somebody else now, and I want to put this new person's name in there. Well, we can do a find replace, find the old name, put in the new name, and make that change all the way through. The last thing that I want to do personally is to try to do it by eye, try to do it manually, because just knowing myself, I will miss things, and someone will say, hey, why is this name in here, or whatever the case may be. Well, I let the computer do it. That's the great thing about computers. All right. So still looking at this, I see that each paragraph runs right into the next paragraph. Now, a common way to fix that is just at the end of every paragraph, put in another paragraph. We might miss one, might not. But the fact is there's an automatic way to do this. Let me highlight everything. Actually, let's do it like this for starters. Let me just go ahead and do something a little trickier. No, let's go ahead and do it that way. All right. I'm going to highlight everything, and then I'm going to change the paragraph spacing. So Control A, highlight everything, A for all, which is a really great way if you want to just change everything at once. Control A will just highlight everything. And now I want to adjust the paragraphs. I want to change something about these paragraphs. So while I'm here, somewhere up here in the menu, there's a thing for paragraph spacing. And if you know where it is, you're better than I am. But there's an easier way to do it. When everything's highlighted, I can simply right-click on it. I just right-click on the highlighted text, and I get a little menu. And one of the options on there is paragraph, for paragraph formatting. Just like we had Control D for formatting text, and it brought up a nice little window for us, this will bring up a little window for everything you want to know about your paragraphs. So highlight or select, select. I right click on it and I bring up my paragraph menu. And one of the things that we see on here is spacing. How much space before a paragraph, how much space after a paragraph. And I want to increase that to 6 points, which is half of a line basically. And this is the advantage of doing it this way instead of just putting in an extra line, hitting your enter key one more time. We can actually control how much space is in between our paragraphs. And all we're trying to do is create a little visual gap there. So 6 is typically going to do it. So let's just see what happens. So I'd say 6 spaces after. And now, as you see, I've got a little space between my paragraphs, which is great. And if I wanted to do more, I just select it, paragraph, and we can go to 12, or we can go to 18. I don't recommend 18 for formal documents. Typically 12 is the way to go. And now I've got a 12-point space between my paragraphs, which is cool. Okay, what else are we going to do here now before we move to part 2 where you all start coaching me? So we also see that every line and every paragraph starts right on this margin over here. Now, typically for formal documents, if we're putting space between our paragraphs, we do not need to indent that first line. The point of the indentation is to say, hey, this is a new paragraph. But we put in the space so it doesn't really matter. We don't need that anymore. But let me go ahead and put this back where it was. So let's say we wanted to indent instead. There are 3 ways to do that. Anybody want to take a stab at one of those 3 ways?
Hitting the tab at the beginning of each paragraph.
Okay, there's one.
Wildly hitting the space bar a random number of times and hoping that it looks halfway decent.
There's number 2, not recommended. There's an easier way. Yeah. Once upon a time when we all used typewriters, we would hit that space bar, 5 times, maybe 3 or 5 times, which is a really tedious way to do this. And it's not going to be accurate because remember, the spacing is going to change depending on the letters in the text. So it might not even give you a nice consistent thing. The simple way is this. We go up to our ruler and we've got some things up there in our little ruler that are very, very useful to us. Now, if you don't see a ruler on the top of your document, like I've got here, and I've got one down the side also, you can go to your view menu and there's a place where you can turn on and off the ruler. You're going to want your ruler turned on. Okay, it's right up there at the top on the view menu, ruler. Because when we see that, now we can see a lot of different things. We can see where every line is going to start. We can see where every line is going to end. We can see where the wrapping lines start, where the first lines start, and we can also see where we're putting our tabs. That becomes very useful. So let me just click anywhere in this first paragraph. And if we look up here on the far upper left, you see something called left indent. And it has a little down triangle called first line indent. It has a little up triangle called hanging indent. And it has a little block that just says left indent. If I move the top one by itself, it's going to change where that first line starts. Let me put it back now. If I move the little up arrow called hanging indent, that will change where all the wrapping lines start. And if I take the little one, the little square underneath it for left indent, it's going to do both at the same time, just like that. So what we want to do, since we've taken away our spaces between the paragraphs, is we want to get a first line indent. Now, quick tip for you. Let me just change the first paragraph. All right, I'm going to bring it over to 1/2 inch. So this whole paragraph, the formatting of this paragraph has a 1/2 inch indentation. And if I'm at the end of that paragraph and hit my enter key, the next paragraph is going to have the same format. So it's going to start in automatically 1/2 inch until I move it back over there. So if you set up your first paragraph with the appropriate indent, then every time you finish that paragraph and you hit your enter key, the next one's going to do the same thing, which makes it much, much easier. Okay, so let me undo some nonsense here. All right, let's undo that one also. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click, I'm going to drag to the bottom, and then I'm going to do it all at once for all of those paragraphs. And now we've automatically created the first line indent. It's going to be accurate, it's going to be consistent, and it's a lot faster than having to do it yourself every time. And if you're a crazy editor like I am, I'll write something quickly and then I will edit it very, very slowly. Many times I find that I'm changing where those paragraphs are, where I'm saying, hey, I'm sort of shifting topics here. I need to start a new paragraph. Well, I don't want to have to go back and then put my little tab in or take it out. If I want to combine two paragraphs, and I've got to go and take the tab out that I put in previously. So I do it with my ruler settings, my margin settings, and it's all automated for me, which is neat. The same thing is true on the right-hand side. We've got a little arrow up there that says right indent, and that tells us where does the line stop. And we can change that one just by dragging it also. So I'm going to do one last thing. I'm going to just select all. I'm going to fully justify everything with Control J, which I see has now put that in the wrong place. So I'll just move that back into place. So you see right here on that right indent, if I click on it, every line now comes right up against that point. And since I set my margins at 1 inch, that's exactly 1 inch from the side of the page. Okay. Now, let's say tab to the left. I'm going to turn my Pilcrows off for just a moment here. I don't think we need them for this. I'm going to hit my tab key, tab to center, and tab to right. And let me go ahead and take off that. All right. So how do we change those tabs? So we've got our controls up there for first line indent, for hanging indent, for right and left margin. We can also add our tab settings up there. I remember when I was in high school, 1971, something like that. I'm lying. And before I learned how to type, my mother typed all my papers for me, and she pulled out the 40-pound electric typewriter. And one of the things she'd always do is she'd spend quite a bit of time moving these little bars and little things across the top. Maybe some of you remember that. But I remember watching her do that. And she was setting her tabs, is what she was doing. So when she would hit the tab key, that's where it would go. We can still do that here. So we've got this line right here. And we're going to put in right tabs, center tabs, and left tabs. Does anybody know where I can find my different types of tabs? And feel free to unmute yourself. I think we have a small enough group. I'm not worried about crosstalk. Does anybody know where I can find my different types of tabs?
Don't know. You? Is it under insert?
Even easier. On the far left side of my ruler, so I've got my big ruler across the top, there is a little L up there.
Oh.
Yep. And I can click on that. Every time I click on it, it's going to go to a different type of tab. So right now it says if I put in a tab, it's going to be a left tab. Let me click on that. Now I've got center tab. Now I've got right tab. What that's telling me is if I click on the ruler, what kind of tab am I going to add to the ruler? I've also got a decimal, which is, it starts at a point and all the numbers go to one side, but as soon as you hit a period, it starts going the other direction. So you can line up numbers with decimals. And I've got a couple of other things in there also. But what we want is the most common ones are your left tab, your center tab, and your right tab. And I know it's a little small to see, which is kind of why I'm hoping you're sort of following along also, but that's where it is, right up there next to the ruler. So let me go back to, let me just keep clicking through until I get to left tab right there. Okay, so now I've got my left tab turned on. Wherever I click in my ruler, it's going to put a left tab at exactly that point. So let me put one at 1. I'm going to simply click on 1. And now you see there is a left tab at 1. And the neat thing is I can actually drag that back and forth, click and drag back and forth if I want to change it. So if I hit my tab key at the beginning of that line, it's going to take it right up to my left tab. Now, let me go to the next one, center tab. Let's say I want to put a center at 3.5. And let me click it one more time to get my right tab. And let's put a right tab at 5.5. So you see, that's how we can actually set our tabs where we want them to be. It's a neat little trick, and the funny thing is, that little tab setting has been up there since the beginning of Microsoft Word, and a lot of people don't know that it's there, but that's where it is, and you can cycle through them like, hey, what's that little L thing in the corner, right? You know, whatever, just ignore it. But that's what it is. We can choose different types of tabs, and then once we've selected the type we want, we just click on the ruler up here to put it into place. And if we're not really satisfied with where it is, we can actually drag it around to where it's supposed to be. So that helps. The point is we want to get things in the exact spot where we want them to be. Okay, so if we have a particular appearance that we're trying to give to our documents, instead of trying to second guess it or just hit tab a bunch of times to kind of move things to approximately where they're supposed to be, we just choose our tab and put it where we want it, which is a lot easier. What I see many times, see that little arrow, that's my tab mark right there. What I will see a lot of times is if somebody wants to move something over, they just go tab, tab, tab. Oh, I need to get rid of my tabs. Let me take those out of there. They'll just go tab, 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 and it's going to move it over 1/2 inch at a time. The easier way to do that and the more accurate way to do that, choose the type of tab you want, put it where it's supposed to be, and hit your tab key one time. Let me put that one back over there. Like that. That makes sure it's accurate. Let's do something really, really quickly, because I really want to get to style sheets, because style sheets is where Microsoft Word absolutely excels. I mean, just flat out is great. And also auto table of contents. I think I can do those pretty quickly. I've got on my list of things over here to deal with pictures, wrapping, size, position, but that's less commonly used. Style sheets, however, are very, very powerful and useful to us. So let me just move to that. And then we'll get over to part 2. All right, so let's say I want to put some headings in here. And I'm going to put a heading up here called, "This is topic 1. Hurrah." And down here, I'm going to put a heading, "This is topic 2. Okay. Now, following APA style, that's going to be over there against the side. And I'm only going to do this once. Style settings basically means if you have certain formatting conditions set up, size, font, bold or not bold, margins, spacing, all of these things that affect the text, you can give it a name or use a name so that declare it, hey, this is going to be style something. So that anytime you have similar text, you simply need to activate that style and everything will be automatically applied to it. Let me show you what I mean, because this is the thing that Microsoft does really, really well. Numbered lists, terrible. Tables, not so great. Style settings, fantastic. All right, so let me find my style settings. So up here on the home menu, you've got some automatic styles up here. And you can choose some things and, heading styles. And really for professional documents, you're probably going to just avoid all of that because the sizing, the colors, all that kind of stuff. I just personally, I don't get it. Okay. But there is a little arrow right there. So under the styles, there's a little arrow to pop out this menu. And I'm going to pop it out, which is hiding. So let me pull it back into place. All right, there we go. Get it back in the window. And okay. So we've got a little style menu that popped out. I just clicked the little arrow there and it popped it out. So what it has here is it has some predetermined style settings for you. So for example, heading 1, heading 2, titles and so forth. I don't know what, oops, we just went crazy here. Hold on. All right, back to there. But we can also set our own. But let me show you basically how they work. So we've got, let's say, heading 1. So I'm going to click anywhere in this paragraph, and I'm going to click heading 1. And it's automatically going to apply formatting to that text. And down here on topic 2, you see that's indented. It's 12-point Times New Roman. But if I click heading 1, it's now Times New Roman 16, and it's not indented, and it's got some extra space around it. So the styles will automatically apply a set of formatting to your text. Now, after you get past 1, then we got some blue and I don't know, just all kinds of different things that I don't get. But here's where it's really fun or really powerful. You can change any of those settings and then update the style. Let's say, for example, here's our heading 1. Let's say, I'm gonna hit normal. Let's say we want heading 1 to be Tahoma, which is lovely. And we want it to be 14 points. And we want it to be italicized. And we want it to be centered. Okay, so I've just applied a bunch of stuff to that text. Oh, and let me also right click on it. Let's put some spacing, 6 points before, 12 points after. Okay, so I've just done a bunch of stuff to that text. Well, I want that to be what heading 1 looks like. So whenever I choose heading 1, I want it to look just like that. And here's how we do that. So here we've got our style menu and heading 1 and so forth. Without clicking, if I just hover over it, I've got a little arrow over here where I can pop down a menu. And I can do something that says update heading 1 to match selection. If I choose that, it's going to say that text has been selected. So whatever's been applied to that text, make that the new definition for heading 1. So I'm going to say update heading 1 to match selection. Now, Now, if you look down below where it says this is topic 2, that's also a heading 1. So look what's going to happen when I update the definition or the settings for heading 1. It's also going to update that one, because anything that's been declared as that heading style is also going to be updated by the new settings, which is cool. And if you really want to get tricky, you say, you know what, this is my body text here. Let me do some things to it. Okay, because right now it's just the normal settings. Let's make it left justified. Let's give it a new color. Let's make it, for whatever reason, we're going to make it orange and we're going to highlight it in light blue. And I'm just monkeying with it. I'm going to center it. Okay. And I'm going to change the font on it to something more interesting than what we have currently. Let's make it alpha pipe. Oops, BC alpha pipe. Hello. Light. Oh, I need to highlight it. All right, BC alpha pipe. Okay. So I want, for whatever crazy reason, I want my body text to look like that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that text and I want to create my own style. It's not heading 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to give it my own name because this is something that I might want to use again. Styles. Let's come down here to the bottom of my style menu, and there's a little button that says New Style. It's not a heading style. It's my unique style that I'm creating for certain types of text. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to give it a name. Dave's Fancy Text. And okay. So wherever in my document, wherever I want that style, I can simply click on that paragraph, and up there is Dave's Fancy Text. And it didn't bring in my highlighting, but it brought in everything else. Or I can go back to normal. So you see, I've created my own style. So if I'm doing a newsletter, for example, and I want to kind of jazz it up a little bit, I want some fancy headings in my newsletter, and I want them all to look the same. Probably the easiest way to do it is just do it one time and create a style. And then whenever you get to that type of text again, all you have to do is click in your style menu on the style that you've created. Now let's say it's awful. I'm going to hit normal again and I can get rid of it. Okay. But that is what Microsoft Word does better than anything else. Creating and using styles. Just like that. All right. Whew. So that's, oh, the last thing I want to do is this. And then we're going to go to the next part. One thing that we often need to do with our documents is create tables of contents. What we do not want to do is we do not want to have to type in topic 1 and then, space or dots or whatever, or use a tab setting, and then, page 1 and then topic 2, page 2, or whatever, the cases like that. If we have identified text as heading 1, heading 2, or heading 3, Microsoft Word can read those heading styles and create our table of contents for us. Now, it will not work unless you have text that has been formatted as with the styles heading 1, 2, 3, or whatever. Okay, you must have that first, because what it's going to do, it's going to use those headings to create your table of contents. This is topic 3, and let me call that heading 1. And it turns out it's fairly simple to do. So we're going to add something to this, but in this case, we're actually going to add a reference. And so if we look up here in the references, because it's going to, like, this part refers to another part of the text. We're going to, from here, we're referring to something else. So it's a reference, right? So we go to references, and let me just left justify. I'm going to say table of contents, and there's my table of contents. I just chose the first one, view. Let me change the view on this just briefly. Too small. Let me go back to, let's call it 150. So it's easier to see. And I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. So it created for me an automatic table of contents. So for one, that's great because it's already all in there, right? It's got the headings and it's got the page numbers. But the nifty thing is, let's say we're adding and subtracting and we're putting in text and taking out text, and some of those headings don't end up on the same page where they started. It turns out we can, okay, it turns out we can update it automatically. So let's say topic 3 down there is on the next page. Quick pop quiz. How do I create a page break? Anybody? How do I get this right here onto the next page?
Insert.
Well, we are going to add something to it, but it's not on the insert menu. So I don't think it is.
Yeah, on the left.
We could add page break, which will automatically push down. So you're right on that. There's a keyboard shortcut also if you're typing. Control Enter. Control and Enter will automatically stick in a page break.
Enter.
Control Enter or insert page break. The thing you don't want to do is hit your Enter key a bunch of times, because if you end up changing any of your text, adding or subtracting lines, they might not be in the right place anymore. So either insert page break or Control Enter. Okay, so we've pushed this third heading down to page 2. But if we look at our table of contents, it still says it's on page 1. So we need to update our table of contents. Now, if we typed it all in manually, we'd have to go through the entire document and say, okay, this is page 1, this is page 2. We'd have to go back up to the top there. We'd have to type in the new numbers, right? But Microsoft is doing this automatically for us. So all I need to do is right click on the table of contents and say, hey, update this field. And let's see what our options are. So there's my table of contents. We know the page numbers are off because we moved some things around. Right click, update field. Now it says, what do you want to update? Page numbers only or the entire thing? Well, if I've added or subtracted headings, I need to update the entire thing. I need to just rebuild it from scratch. But in this case, we're just changing the page numbers. So I will choose the top option, update page numbers. Okay. And now you see topic 3 is down on page 2. And it's done it for me automatically and accurately and easily, which are all the 3 things that I'm most interested in. Questions on any of that stuff? Okay, if they come up, ask me. All right, let's switch over to the second sample. And let me do a new share. We want sample 2. So I'm going to tell you what I want to accomplish, and then you all try to tell me how to do it. Okay. So this is a business letter, and I'm going to move it around and blow it up a little bit. And let's get my zoom, and let's bring it up to 150. Maybe too much. Let's try 125. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to use a modified block format for this letter, which means, among other things, this information over here needs to be over on the right-hand side. So how can I take these? Actually, an Ernie English Writing Lab, so it's internal, external. Yeah, so let's get these 3 lines over on the right side of the page. How can I do that?
You can write justify, either go Control R or go to the little corner and click until you get your right justify.
Yes, so I can click up. I can click up here
Yeah.
in my little menu bar for Right Justify or Control R. Now, I want those to be all those lines together without a bunch of space between them.
Let's see. Got to go to the.
So I want to change the paragraphs because these are individual paragraphs.
Yeah, where you pointed to before, that's what I use. No, the bottom, right there.
Yeah, so we could bring
Yeah.
up this, which is our line spacing,
Uh-huh.
and we could do it this way. We're probably going to do some other things to it. So one option, of course, is just to go up here and choose 1, and that'll be single space. What's another way we can get to our paragraph settings?
Control, right
Yes.
click.
Yeah,
Or
you
right
click.
Right click and choose paragraph. So we see it here also. So we've got double spacing. We want single, no space after it. It's already right alignment. We could have changed it here, but it's there. So we got 2 options for that. So far, so good. Now, here is this one, the paragraph, the address we're sending it to. Okay. Let's also change these to single, but I don't want that next line to be right up against it.
Hmm.
I need to add some spacing after that block of text there. So I need to add some spacing after that paragraph. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Pilcrow here so you can see where those paragraphs are. How can I generate some extra space after that particular paragraph?
I would just hit enter once.
And just put in a so like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we could do that. What's another way? How do we get to our paragraph menu?
Right click.
Right click on it. And we've got our spacing there. We can just bring up the spacing. And now we've got our 12. I'm going to show you another little trick here. Sometimes when we're switching back and forth between paragraphs with space and lines that don't have space, it gets a little confusing. We end up having to do a lot more adjusting than maybe we want to do. Now that we've got our Pilcrow activated and we can see all of our hidden formatting commands here, I see that every single one of these lines is a new paragraph, which is working in this case. It's working just fine. But there might actually be an easier way to do this. Are you all familiar with the term soft return?
No, I've never heard of it.
So if I hit my enter key, I'm going to make a new paragraph, right? So, and whatever setting that I had in the current paragraph is going to be applied to the next paragraph. So, but it is possible to say, you know what? I want to start a new line here, but I don't want to start a new paragraph because I don't want to have to go back and change settings or anything like that. All I want is the same paragraph, just start again, start a new line. So there's something called a soft return, or frankly, it's just called a line break. So we're not starting a new paragraph, we're just starting a new line within the same paragraph. So let me show you what that looks like. So every time we hit enter, we got this little Pilcrow over here, and we got a new paragraph. But let me do this. Let me just run all these together for a second. Instead of hitting my enter key to go to the next line, which will create a new paragraph, I can hit shift enter, and it's going to create a line break within the same paragraph. Shift enter, and I'm going to do it here after the word lane. So you'll see there's this little command down here, this little arrow. It's not a Pilcrow, it's a little arrow. It basically says, put a line break here, but stay in the same paragraph. So one of the things we could have done, instead of coming up here and changing the paragraph spacing for all of this, we could have left this at double, okay, like this. But instead of making a new paragraph, let me just delete to pull out the paragraph, and I'm going to put in, I'm going to put in a soft return instead. Now I can just adjust that one paragraph and do it all at once. So there's a couple different ways to get there. Sometimes it's very useful to say, if you've got spacing and whatnot between paragraphs that you've added into your text, but you don't want to apply to line breaks, well, then don't use paragraphs. Just hit your Shift Enter and create a soft return or a line break. So let me go ahead and just take that back to double, back to single. And now if I put in some space, it's only going to apply the space to the last line, because that's the end of the single paragraph. So we can do the same thing here. Let's just put a little space after this one paragraph. So instead of spacing all the lines out, it only added the space from the end of the paragraph to the start of the next paragraph. Okay, so there's that. Now, I want my text here. This is 3 paragraphs. There's my Pilcrow down there. I want the text of these paragraphs to be single spaced, but I want a first line indent for each paragraph. So how do I do that? Single spacing, first line indent for each paragraph.
Do you first of all need to select your text?
Okay, let's do that. And since things like indent and stuff, that's going to apply to the whole paragraph, I don't actually need to select every bit of the paragraph. As long as my cursor is in there somewhere, it's going to apply to the paragraph. So I can select it all, or if that's too difficult to get to the exact right spot, I just have to make sure that some of the text is selected. So we've done that. Now what?
I'm on an Apple, so I did a 2-finger click and then I selected paragraph, and then I would select single instead of double.
Okay, so I right-clicked or your 2-finger click, bring up single. Okay, now I've got my single spacing, and now I want my first line indent. How do I do that? I'll give you a hint. It's in the ruler.
So the upside down triangle, I grabbed that guy and scooched him over a smidgen, and that indents the beginning of each first line.
Scooched a smidgen. I believe that is the technical term, actually. Yep, and that's how you do it. Now we've got our first lines indented. All right, now let's say we want all of our heading information, all of the addresses up here to be, let's say we want to create a style called headings. This is short enough, we don't really need to do it, but let's go ahead and walk through it anyway here. Let's say we want a right heading and a left heading, each with its own style. And let's say I want this text up here to be, let's just grab a really common one. Arial. Okay, Arial, silly common. If I wanted to turn that into a style, how would I do that?
Just go up to the tab where it says styles.
Okay.
Then you click that bottom corner. Yes.
which just went somewhere. Let's put it over there on the side. Okay. Can I get it to stick in there? Doesn't really matter. I'll just put it down there. Okay. Now I want to create a new style out of that. So what do I click now?
You select your style, your font.
I could select one that's already here. But if I want to make my own style, I'll give you a hint.
So you select one of those and or hover over, hit the down arrow or that scroll, click the arrow on the right.
We could
and
do that.
then go ahead.
No, please continue. And then update the existing style to match that one.
Yes.
That'd be one. That would definitely be one way to do it. So let's say we wanted heading 2. We want to call that heading 2. We could just hit the arrow and say update heading 2 to match that selection. So now, whenever I'm gonna select this paragraph over here. If I click on it and say heading 2, it's going to apply that same style to it automatically, which is pretty neat, right?
Yeah.
Because we only have to do it one time. And now we just click on the style. So that makes it pretty easy. But if for some reason we don't want to use one of the styles that's already there, we could just make our own style, which I will show again right quick. So let's call that whatever reason. We're going to make that red or orange text. We're going to put some spacing after it. Okay. So I want to make a new style. There is also a button down here called New Style. And using that button, I can make it my own style. So it's not one of the styles that's currently programmed into Microsoft Word. I want something unique to me. So for example, let's say I wanted all of my paragraphs to have that indentation, because right now, see, clear all. So right now, that's what the paragraph looks like. It's no indentation. It's Times New Roman 12. But I wanted to create a separate body style. I could say orange text, for whatever reason. Antipasto, because it's cool. Paragraph after, and I want this text to be slightly indented on both sides. So I'm going to pull in my margins a little bit like this. And maybe let's get really slick with this. Paragraphs. Can I do it from here? Line and page breaks. No. Let's go to paragraph effects. All of those. Set as default. No. References, mailing, review. What I'm looking for is borders and margins. And I apologize for this, but this isn't my standard version that I use. Shapes. I'm looking for borders, paragraph spacing. Gosh, you'd think it would be on the paragraph menu. Paste options. Indentation space, set as default. Change tabs. Mailings, review, view, help, Acrobat layout. There's my spacing up there on my layout. It's not what I want. This might be more trouble than it's worth, so I might just move on here very, very shortly. But now I'm bugged because I want to see it. Borders. Draw a table horizontal. We want a top border on it, and we want a bottom border on it. Okay. And for my spacing, we're just going to make this wild. Okay. So let's say I wanted that to be a style, which has got a lot of stuff going on in it, right? But I'm going to put some call out text in here, and it's very unique to this document. So I'm going to select that paragraph. I'm going to create a new style called block, or let's call it fancy block. We can call it whatever we want and hit OK. So now I've got a paragraph called fancy block. Let's say I want to use it again for this one down here. I click on the paragraph, fancy block, and it does it all automatically for me. Okay, so that's making your own style. It says that something is on top of it, but I don't know what it is. Okay, so we can make our own styles, which is nifty. Please move this window away. Oh, I see what it's done. Okay. Let's see. So what else do we want to do? And, you know, since we've got just a couple of minutes, let's undo. So we've got a bunch of styles and things. How do we undo everything? You've actually already seen it, but I didn't point it out completely. How would you undo all of these style settings?
I saw a clear all button, but I can't remember where. Maybe hover over one of those sections.
Well,
paragraph.
Let me highlight this paragraph. So we want to take off all of the style settings, right? So it's something about the styles.
So go back up to your styles in your bottom right corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a clear all option.
Right at the very top.
Oh.
Yep. And you know, this one down here, I've got that indent on it, which I've added to it. Clear all takes it off. So basically just strips it all the way back to normal text if you wanted to do that for some reason. Clear all. We have a
so
couple.
You do have to so you do have to select what you want cleared. It won't just take you to the next.
That's correct.
Style, I guess.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. But let's put some things back in there because that was actually kind of fun. Fancy block. All right. So what else do we want to do? Let's clear it for now. Let me just click in there, clear it. Let me put in some paragraph spacing. After, put a 12 point in there. Let me get rid of my style menu. All right. Last thing I want to do here. Let's do that one also. Paragraph. No, we don't want that. We want paragraph spacing. Before and after those. So let me put that back into place also. Okay. So the last thing I want to do here is I want to fully justify all of the text in the body here. How do I do that? With a keyboard command.
Control A.
Well, Control A is gonna select everything. So
and then Control J is the full justification.
Should I do it here? I've got everything selected right now.
Well, you need to select what you want to fully justify, and then Control J, whatever you want to fully justify.
Yes, but you've added one extra step. If at any point I ever do Control A, it's going to select everything in the entire document again. I just need to make sure that these 3 paragraphs are selected because that's what we're justifying. And I don't even have to select the entire paragraph because the justification is going to affect all the paragraph at once anyway. You can't do that to just part. So as long as some of that paragraph is selected, it's going to be applied to the whole paragraph. So I've got some text selected. Now what's my keyboard command for justifying, full justification?
It's Control J. or on a Mac, Command J.
Or Command J on a Mac. Sure enough. Now that looks pretty. Let's say it lasts, let's do one last thing. Let's say I want to move, for whatever reason, I want to move all of this in, this address, I want to move it in 1/4 of an inch. What's one way I could do that?
Select it, and then in your ruler, the little box underneath the 2 little triangles, grab that little box and move it wherever you want it to be.
And there we go. And that's actually another reason to use those soft returns, those line breaks instead of paragraphs, because then I don't actually have to select the entire paragraph, 3 individual paragraphs and move them all individually, or, select them and move them. I can just click anywhere in there and it will grab the whole paragraph, which is kind of nice. All right. So that brings us to 355, actually. We're skipping, just so you know what we're skipping. We're skipping pictures. We have done auto table of contents. I'm reading my notes over here. We've done page breaks. We didn't do bulleted and numbered lists, which is not that big of a deal, to be quite honest with you. You just click up here on bullets. Although I will tell you this, if you use Microsoft Word's bulleted or numbered list, I have found that in many cases it defaults to something that I'm just not interested in for whatever reason, or I want it to be different. So what I will typically do is I will do that. I will fix one of them to be just the way I want it to be. Okay, like whatever the case may be. I'll fix one of them, and then I will go to my styles. I will find the styles for that, for lists, and then I will update it and do them all at once. So I just find that I have to make adjustments because in many cases, the default options aren't so great, but it's always an option. Do one, adjust the style, and it will update everything accordingly. That's really all there is to say about that. So with the remaining 4 minutes, anything that you want, anything on your mind, like, hey, Dave, how do I do blank? Anything you would like me to cover since we're right towards the end here? Or, no, Dave, our brains are already melting right now, and I think we've done quite enough for the end of the day. That's also an appropriate response. So, well, I think I'm going to call it. I'm going to wrap it up there then. Let me stop sharing at this point. Since we're at 3:57, I hope you all have found this useful. I hope you got a couple quick tips out of it and some tricks out of it. Hopefully you learned a few new little tools or some options that are available to you with Microsoft Word. But remember, what we're really trying to accomplish is 2 things. We're trying to be much more efficient with our use of Microsoft Word, and we're also trying to ensure that our final product gives us a nice, easy to read, professional looking appearance to our documents. So we've covered a lot of things to address both of those. And I appreciate you all being here today and sticking with us. I know the end of the day is always tough. I try to be as entertaining as I possibly can be, but I tend to do a little too much sometimes. So thank you all for being here. I will be sending out certificates, if not tomorrow. And Sandy, I'm glad you got yours for the last one. I'll be sending those out tomorrow. I'll also be packaging the video up, getting it on our YouTube channel, and I will send the link around to everybody of this in case you ever want to go back and take another look at it. Okay. Thank you all so much. I'm going to call it here. Have a great day. I probably won't talk to you before the holidays. So, I know everybody really needs a little bit of time off right now, and you have undoubtedly earned it. So, pamper yourselves a little bit over the holidays, and just I wish you and all of your families wellness. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
All right. Have a good day.